Welcome to Break the Box, a podcast at the intersection of faith, entrepreneurship, and creativity. I'm your host, Jake Starkey. The goal of this podcast is to tell the story of other Christian entrepreneurs and creatives and encourage you to break out of whatever box is holding you back. If you're a first-time listener, I encourage you to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, Season 2 is coming soon, and we're excited to bring more of these to you on a regular basis. Today's guest is Sean Tambagahan from Butler Branding, and we talk about his company, the entrepreneurial spirit running through his family, and the radical encounter with God that changed his life. Here's my conversation with Sean. Thank you so much for joining us. Real quick, can you just give us a little bit of background as to kind of who you are and how you came to be with Butler Branding or started?
Yeah, sure. I started Butler in 2012, so July will be 5 years. And basically, I started it with no industry expertise, no formal training. I was the operations manager for several of my mom's companies. She had 7 small companies that she was running at one time, or she started one time, and I had to run them. And part of that included marketing and branding. And long story short, I wasted thousands of dollars working with other companies. And I had enough marketing understanding and a passion for design to convince her to let me hire one guy who me and him together would be the marketing department for all 7 of her brands. And she agreed, and she said, okay, well, what happens when all the initial branding is done for all my companies? You know, am I going to have to let this guy go? I said, you know what, no, while we're setting up your websites and graphics and things like that, I'll simultaneously be building up my own company. And by the time we're done using him, I'll acquire him as my own employee, and I'll just open this up to the public to see if there's a need, because obviously I had a need. And I figured, you know, other businesses might be in the same boat. And so that's what we did. We did, at that time, it was just graphics, websites, and basic organic SEO before SEO was really popularized, and you could really just search now like how to do it. You really had to study and learn how search engine optimization worked. And so those are the 3 things that we started out with. And basically, I built the runway as I was landing the plane, and still continue to do so to this day. Within by the time we were done building my mom's companies, I was able to launch Butler, and we got a booth at a women's conference that had, I think, I forget how many tens of thousands of women leaders and business owners, entrepreneurs in the valley. And we got a few good clients out of that, did a really good job for them. I spent about 4 months just really hustling, hitting the streets, calling people, sending out mailers, just doing everything I possibly could to get the name out there. And within about 4 months, I had enough business in Butler to be able to train someone else to do my job with my mom and do this full time. And I acquired that employee as our webmaster, and then we just grew from there.
Wow. So it sounds like entrepreneurship kind of runs in your family if your mom has 7 businesses.
Yeah, my dad is an immigrant from the Philippines, and my mom is a woman who started a business in the 80s because she felt it was hard to climb the corporate ladder in America at that time as a female. And so she just started her own business. And then my dad moved from the Philippines to here. He started a business. Neither of them have an American college degree, and so they never really pushed that on me. And, you know, they are just kind of raised with the mentality that, like, hey, if anybody could do it, you could do it. You could work just as hard as the guy on top and be underneath him, or you could own your own business and kind of, you know, set your own, schedule, you know, not be told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, where to be, how to dress. And that was always kind of appealing to me. So, yeah, I'm definitely was raised up in an entrepreneurial home.
Very cool. I've read a little bit kind of just on your website as far as your faith. And so did you start Butler Branding or start kind of marketing and then come to faith, or were you a Christian and then started Butler Branding?
Yeah, I became a Christian in 2007. So I became a Christian first. I got married in 2006, and I'm sorry, it was 2007 actually. And then that same year, later on in the year, I had a radical encounter with God. completely changed my life. At that time, I was working construction during the day and working at a bar in the evenings. And when I had that encounter with God, I felt really convicted about working in the bar scene. And so I quit my job, which didn't really make sense at the time financially because construction slowed down and I actually got laid off. And so that was my only bread and butter, was working at a bar. And so as a last ditch effort, I asked my mom, hey, I don't have a job. I need to work. Do you have any entry level tasks that I could do for you? And that's how I started working for my mom. And so, yeah, definitely came to Christ first. And then I had at that time, I always knew I wanted to start a business, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so now in my newfound faith, I had kind of left that desire and really wanted to be a minister, a full-time minister. And so pretty early on in my faith, I recognized that call, not necessarily to be a vocational minister, like being paid for my ministry, but to be a full-time minister in the sense of being an asset to the church. And my leaders recognized that and started giving me responsibility and teaching, Bible studies and groups and things like that. But I didn't know how that was going to play out in my life. And so I actually had a crisis in my faith, figuring out like what do I do? I could basically start from scratch. Like, God, do you want me to go to seminary? You want me to like sell everything and go to the mission field? I'll go to India. I'll do whatever you want me to do. You want me to start a business and just make a bunch of money and support ministries? Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. And I was hearing nothing. I didn't hear anything back. And so I was just like, okay, doing life, you have to pay bills. And so I was working with my mom. And then eventually I realized that I was good at kind of administrative type work and running the business because she was giving me more and more responsibility in her business. And that kind of gave me the hunger again to start a business, but the hunger for ministry didn't leave either. And so at this time, we're sharing the gospel on the streets. We're teaching people how to share the gospel. We're doing things, very evangelistic, making gospel tracts, things like that. And I felt, I don't know exactly when it was, but just kind of a change in my theology and missiology, that what I realized is that as a believer, as a Christian, everybody's a full-time minister. And your ministry is just funded through different means. And so I started seeing things differently like that. So if you're a pastor or a missionary, then obviously your ministry is funded through financial contributions or through the church. But if you're a barista, your ministry is funded by Starbucks. If you're an entrepreneur, your ministry is funded through the business that God's given you the ability to run. And so I kind of felt a peace that God has called me to full-time ministry, and that ministry would be funded and supported by the business that God's given me the ability to run. And so that's kind of where Butler started from, with the understanding that I'm not going to stand before God and present him this like amazing business one day. It doesn't matter. It's what did I do with the gifts and talents that he's given me to be faithful to the call that he's put on my life. And so I always see Butler as kind of a means to an end.
Sure. Out of curiosity, how did the name Butler come about?
We were tossing around this idea because, again, this isn't the best way to start a business, but it's just how we did it. I came up with a hate list, a list of everything I hated about the services that we were getting. And I said, we're just going to do the opposite. So instead of saying like, here's what we're going to do, I said, here's what we're not going to do. Here's what we're not going to be. And really it came up to being a servant to our clients. And so we said, hey, how can we best serve our clients? How can we be like a butler, a servant? And so, we were going to call ourselves like Digital Butler or something like that. And we just landed on, at that time, the name was Butler Web and Design, because we were just doing a lot of websites and design work. And then just last year, we rebranded as Butler Branding. And for several reasons. One is web and design kind of bottles us into just websites and graphics, where we do a lot more. Now we're doing photography, video. We can do traditional. We're doing some commercials, billboards. I mean, branding covers so much. And so web and design kind of doesn't define that. So we wanted to change it to Butler Branding. And then also we changed our logo, where traditionally was a picture of an actual butler. It didn't give the impression of high quality consultant that multi-million-dollar corporations would come to for advice. It was giving the picture of more of like an order taker, where we transitioned out of being an order taking model to more of a brand strategy design consultancy.
Very cool. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. So you started out, it was you, and then you hired your buddy for web design. How did, like you said, you now do video and photography and stuff. How did you strategically plan that expansion? Was it that you were getting more video work and like, okay, so that means I got to find a video guy, or did you?
Yeah. So the way our team grew, so I at the time he wasn't a buddy. He's become a friend, but at that time I didn't know him from anybody. I just called a couple of trade schools and said, hey, send me your top candidates and I laid out what I wanted. So, they needed coding expertise and they needed to know the Adobe suite. And when I interviewed him, he said probably like 3 words, I could do that. Something like that. I was like, all right, cool. You're hired. And so you're my webmaster. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. And so it was just me and him until he told me, he's like, Sean, you're driving me crazy. We have too much work. I need another person who could do what I do. And so my next hire was another developer. And then we were getting busy with that. And so I hired on, we went through a few different people. I thought I needed a marketing person and a salesperson. It turns out we had more inbound business than we needed. So I didn't need them. I needed a project manager, someone to help me kind of manage projects, because as the CEO, someone who's, for me, what I need to be spending most of my time doing is onboarding clients, dealing with clients and closing deals and strategizing with them. And where it comes to managing the details of how the project needs to be finished, I get caught in the weeds a lot of times. So I needed a project manager. So yeah, we have 2 developers, a project manager. I hired a graphic designer who could also help us with other web design work. And then I met our videographer, Manny, just random. Someone from a local church, called me and said, hey, we need we need an outsider to help us with this like Easter skit. And so you're going to interrupt the Easter service and act like you're debating with the pastor or something like that. And it was just a fun little thing that I did. But in meeting with the pastor, I told him what I did for a living. And he said, hey, you need to meet my son. He's like a great videographer. And if I had a dime for every time I heard that, I'd be rich, because I need to meet everybody's son. But he showed me, he sent me his reel. I was like, oh my gosh, this kid's good. And at the time, he was a kid. He was 19, I think, he was 20. And he showed me his video reel. And I said, oh, I want those skills in my office, but I didn't have enough video work for him. And so I talked with him. I said, hey, do you know how to do design? Can you work in Illustrator? And can you start, if we do like basic sketches and layouts, would you be able to vector them and things like that? And he said, yep, I could do that. So I hired him on as graphic designer with the understanding that I'm really bringing you on for your video skills in-house and photography. And we get a lot of photography work through our web work, because websites, you need photos to
Sure.
design a website. But he was doing our photos, he was doing some graphics, and then he started doing our own videos in-house. And so when people started seeing the videos that we were producing for ourselves for Butler, that started the snowball effect, where we started getting more requests for videos. So.
Very cool. And kind of going along with that, I see a lot of videos that y'all put out that are very information heavy, very good information as far as explaining content stacking or whatever it may be. Why do you think it's a good idea to give that kind of stuff away for free? I have my opinion, but I'd love to hear yours.
Well, from the very beginning, we wanted to be a servant leader, right? And I get that from Christ. The best way to lead is to serve. And so I said, how can we best serve our clients? And what I realized is that people aren't coming to us because they're so stupid they can't figure it out. They're coming to us because they don't have the time and they want an expert to help them. And so if I can help equip businesses with resources and education and training then they're going to trust me. At first, they're going to trust me because I'm giving them all the goodies, without asking anything in return. And then it also establishes credibility as me knowing what I'm talking about. And so we said one of the things we're going to serve people with or businesses with is free training, free resources. We're going to give them an inside look at our business. We're going to pull the hood back so everybody can have a transparent look. And it builds trust. And when people trust you, they'll work with you. And it also builds credibility. And so, yeah, it's just that servant leadership. It's also building trust. It's building credibility.
Hey, I wanted to take a quick moment and tell you a little bit about Battle Cry Revival Marketing, the producer of this podcast. We believe that when businesses have quality marketing, it gives business owners the freedom to focus on what they do best. We design websites, produce videos, and create marketing materials to help our clients grow their business. Find out more at battlecryrevival.com. Now back to the show. To be tougher for you being so forward in your faith. And what I mean by that is in Houston, for instance, there's a lot of de-churched, not necessarily unchurched, and reaching people and having them know that you're a Christian is not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I'm making an assumption about California, I guess, but is it difficult if someone knows how forward you are in your faith? Have you ever run into obstacles, I guess?
I personally haven't run into obstacles, only because Fresno is in the Central Valley is kind of like the Bible Belt of California. And
Okay.
So like, it's not San Francisco, it's not LA here. It's a different culture than that. But I wouldn't have cared either way. And we actually had this conversation, because it's just now recently where I'm starting to put out more content personally that deals with, faith-based aspects of my life. And this was a kind of another crisis, another turning point in my walk and where I'm going. And at the beginning of this year, I felt that all the content that we were putting out was business-based, and I didn't want to be known as just the branding guy, even though that's a part of what I do, and I know how to do it well, and I want to share that with businesses. It's I see business, even though it's a majority of my time, what I do is very, in my eyes, it's a small part of who I am. And I have other things to say regarding faith and evangelism and family and life. And so it's like, okay, how am I going to put this content on now that I've built kind of this platform around business? Then is it going to seem like I'm flip-flopping now? I'm like the faith guy, and like, how's that going to be? And because before I started Butler, we were, all the things that we were doing was faith-based evangelism, sharing the gospel, and it's very controversial things. When we're sharing the gospel on the streets, you definitely come up with people who are of different beliefs than you, and so we would have debates and things. And so now I build this secular platform in this secular industry, and even though Fresno is the Bible Belt of California, our reach goes past just Fresno, especially with online. So anyway, my thought process was like, if I do what I feel God's called me to do and my business fails, that's a win, because that's what God's called me to do. And I can't be anything else other than me. And so I'm just going to be me, and I'm going to try to be the best, that I could do at that, and let the chips fall where they may. And if that's what God's called me to do, then I can't do anything else. So I never really thought of it like, man, is this going to hurt my business? What would be a tragedy in my eyes, and I thought about this, I even think I talked about this in one of the videos, is I was thinking about this, like, if I were to spend my whole life toiling for the success of Butler, for the hopes that one day it was going to really make an impact for this ministry or whatever that, I'm called to do, but really just focus in on my business, and then I die and I stand before God, and I never see the fruition of what I was really trying to accomplish, that would be a tragedy to me. To spend my life toiling for the success of my business with the hope and expectation that it would reach this level to get this ministry over here, and then it never happens, and I would have wasted my life. That for me is the biggest tragedy. So it's like this tension of like, okay, knowing where I'm going, where I'm heading, what I feel God's called me to do, and also being faithful in the steps that I believe He's given me to accomplish that, but a matter of also daily just seeking guidance to like, okay, God, what do you have for me today?
For me, it's been a real inspiration to watch you and kind of see your business and stuff from just the different Facebook groups and things like that. So I understand what you're saying, and I really appreciate it. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
Do you have any books that you recommend for entrepreneurs?
The very first book on entrepreneurship I ever read was called The E-Myth from, I forget the name of the guy. It's escaping me right now, but The E-Myth Revisited. It's a really good book. And then I read, I think the second one I read was Dave Ramsey's EntreLeadership. Both of those are really great. But when it came to my industry specifically, which is design, branding, creative services, I sought out a coach, and Chris Do from the Future. He's my business coach, and he is actually the one that has really taken Butler to the next level. Like, I mean, I give all credit. You know, there's a saying that if you ever see a turtle on a fence post, you know it didn't get there on its own. And I'm just kind of that turtle on the fence post that's been helped out by a lot of people. And Chris Do has been really instrumental in helping us transition our business and taking it to that next level. And the 3 books that he recommended I read, which I read them right when he told me to read them, was Delivering Happiness from Tony Hsieh, founder of Zappos, The Win Without Pitching Manifesto from Blair Enns, and The Brand Gap from Marty Neumeier. So those are the 3 for specific to creative services. Well, at least the second 2 books, the Brand Gap and Win Without Pitching Manifesto. Those are for creative services. But Tony Hsieh, Delivering Happiness, I think every entrepreneur should read that book. I
have a feeling I know the answer to this one, but what gets you out of bed in the morning?
Coffee. No. Yeah, I mean, every day I try to make it a habit to, like, before I roll out of bed, hit my knees to the floor and ask for guidance for that day. And I have an overarching why that guides everything that I do. And so, again, I see Butler as a means to do that. But my overarching why is really 4 things. And this is what gets me out of bed is evangelism, discipleship, church planting, and world mission. And so evangelism, the way I see that is not just sharing the gospel, but my role specifically as an evangelist for the church is to equip the church to articulate and to preach the gospel and make opportunity, give resources for them to do that. Discipleship, I know there's certain men in my life that God has placed that have the call of ministry on their life, and to kind of play a role of iron sharpening iron in their life. Church planting has been a huge part, a big burden on my heart to be assisting in the planting of churches. So not myself particular being like the lead pastor, but my goal, what I would love to do is if I see a man who has the call of the pastorate on his life, I'd love to be able to fund that ministry for, X amount of years before, so they could get on their feet without having him to worry about being a bivocational minister, that he could give himself fully to prayer and the ministry of the word. And then world mission, there's still billions of people who haven't heard Christ's name. And so the Great Commission has not been fulfilled. And so that's a big passion of mine. And we're working with a couple of organizations that are ministering in the 1040 window. And so those are the 4 things that I'm really passionate about. And again, Butler is not only means to fund that, but has actually been instrumental in being a resource to accomplish those things. And so it's kind of cool.
Sure. Real quick, can you unpack the 1040 window?
Say that again.
What is the 1040 window?
The 1040 window is just like the latitude, longitude. It's just this area of, if you look at the map of this area that is unreached. And so meaning they have no sustainable gospel presence. It's like less than 1% of people would even know. And so there's an organization that we are working with called Mid-India Christian Mission. And they're right in the heart of India. And I've actually been there to India with them a couple of years back, and we're going back in a couple of months in August to do some video work for them and website work. But we're going to shoot a video. But when you go there, people don't know who Jesus is at all. It's like very predominantly Hindu nation and unreached for the gospel, and so they have a big mission field over there.
Wow, very cool. How can people learn more about you and or Butler?
Butler is really easy. Just go to butlerbranding.com, and then you could see about our company. if you want to follow some of the resources and education things that we put out for Butler, follow our YouTube or Facebook channel. And then for me personally, I'm starting to put out more content on a personal blog that I started a very long time ago, hadn't touched it for years, and then just recently revisited it. It's just SeanTambagahan.com. And if you need help spelling that, it's SeanTambagahan.com, SeanTambagahan.com. And that's just my blog. I'll be putting out more videos dealing with things outside of professional life. They might, delve into that as well, but it's more about faith evangelism and things like that. And then we also, I'm going to be redesigning the ministry website for combatingunbelief.com. So I'm kind of all over the place, but primarily you can find me on Facebook or my blog, SeanTambagahan.com.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. It's a privilege to be here.
Thanks for tuning in. Break the Box is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to help us out, a review would be greatly appreciated and is honestly the best way to help the podcast be heard by others. This podcast is produced by Battle Cry Revival Marketing and hosted by Jake Starkey. For show notes, visit battlecryrevival.com/podcast.